Yes, sir. Mr. Breaker.
Here.
Dr. Cross.
Present.
Dr. Crawl.
Present.
Mrs. Lehman. Here. Mr. Neely.
Here.
Mr. Roth.
Present.
And Mr. Red.
Here.
Excellent.
With that, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the time for audience presentations. This is the only time set aside for audience presentations. The Board of Education will take on presentations under consideration and respond at the latest by the end of the next regular Board of Education meeting. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Participants are expected to conduct themselves with civility and respect and follow the guidelines outlined in the board policy. With that, I think we're good. So with that, Joe, call the first presenter, please.
First speaker will be Heather McMeekin.
Hello, my name is Heather McMeekin. Again, I'm the co-president of the Peoria, Illinois chapter of the National Org for Women. And I'm here tonight to set the record straight about a few things that were put on the record last week that are not accurate. First off, the man who, Mr. Nathan Fay, had slandered myself and several others, including parents of marginalized, historically oppressed, and currently targeted children relaying rights violations. They're suffering such things as being called, black youth being called the N-word, being texted with pictures of fried chicken and watermelon, having queer youth are having notes put in their lockers and being targeted with things like straight lives matter, hate speech, etc. We still want you to create a truly diverse, proper, safe schools environment for these marginalized youths. And Mr. Fay's slander of us, calling us liars, was something that was very traumatizing, and people did respond in kind. Now, he did not walk peacefully out. We have video of that. He continued carrying on a conversation and provoking people, and there was an exchange, but we know how that went down. We also would like to call out how you failed to provide police protection when asked after the September 5th meeting, in which several of your community members relayed they didn't feel safe. There was even a doctor who got up and said she did not feel safe getting up and speaking at that meeting. No police were called there, but by Mr. Fay's comments, you all then portrayed us as being the problem, when the problem is there are rights violations occurring. That is why we are here. We have spoken up about those, and people come in and call us liars for it. And then that can be retaliatory when you put that false information against us on the record. Claiming we demanded Krall, Smock, and Sanders to step down because they're Christian, that's a blatant falsehood. You're entitled to your opinion. You are not entitled to misrepresent why we did that, nor to claim falsely that we did that solely because of their religion. That is not true, and I would ask that you clarify that statement and you remove that false narrative that you put on the public record, which could be seen as retaliatory. We also ask that you remove all the "In God We Trust" signs, homemade signs that some of your principals and administrators have hung throughout the school district. In those rooms, we have those pictures. We're prepared to post those online if we need to. It would just be better if you stopped violating these kids' rights and removed it. We'd also wish that you would stop the anti-LGBTQ far-right prayers, pastors coming and then being invited to do prayers when we know that they represent churches that hate us queer folks. And as a non-binary pan person, that is traumatizing for me. So if you're going to invite them to pray and subject people like me to that, you should welcome in all prayers, the humanist, the pagans, the Satanists too, and I hope you will do so. We ask that you bring in training for DEI because you have many good-hearted, well-intentioned people who are still not responding with cultural competency in the moment when rights violations are being brought up to them by children. The right way, you could actually put a floor on this by saying, hate speech is not protected speech. It is not First Amendment speech in a pedagogical environment. And when it's targeted against oppressed children, targeting them for their LGBTQ family or being Black or mixed race, then it rises to the level of a crime. We also ask that you allow affirming statements such as pride shirts to be worn without children being told you shouldn't wear that. That is blatantly anti-LGBTQ. A queer ally or a queer child wearing a pride shirt is an affirmation of the humanity of these historically oppressed and targeted people. Another youth wearing a queer youth shouldn't exist, or there's only two genders, denying the humanity of trans youth is blatantly anti-social and should not be allowed. I did speak out about the colonization and tokenization. I'll also call out the false equivalence. Equating hate speech as the equivalent to affirming speech is not accurate, and you need to receive training on that because history will not be kind. I do believe some of you do care about a good school environment and care about the kids in general and have the best of intentions. It is quite apparent that you do not have enough training and enough people in your lives who are diverse to check you on some of your misstatements. Correct the record.
Our next speaker will be Brian Grove.
Brian Grove, parent from the district. As you recall, in my last presentation to the board, I spoke about one of the many orgs that Mr. Saunders subscribed to in his work email, the Illinois Family Institute, and its rightful place on the Southern Poverty Law Center list of anti-gay extremists for over 20 years. I'd like to share a quote from Lori Higgins, the IFI Director of School Advocacy. There was something profoundly good for society about the prior stigmatization of homosexual practice. She also wrote, if you care about children's temporal and external lives, please oppose anti-bullying efforts in public schools that imply that homosexual behavior is worthy of affirmation. Ms. Higgins continues to spew her brand of hate. As a journalist for Jeannie Ives Breakthrough Ideas, yet another newsletter Mr. Saunders uses his school email to subscribe to. At the time of Mr. Saunders' ridiculous statement that children use the word gay to mean dumb or stupid, and that's not intended to mean homosexual context, as though that's somehow not as bad, I believe his comments to be born out of sheer ignorance about LGBTQ hate speech and how it impacts children. That was at that time. However, based on his pattern of behavior, fueled by a constant flow of subscription-based anti-LGBTQ newsletters dominating his work email, I am now thoroughly convinced that his comments and actions are calculated, intentional, and manipulative. They are straight from the playbook of organizations like the Illinois Family Institute and people like Lori Higgins. It explains why the environment at Grundy really never improved for my child. Due to the number of repeat offenses perpetrated by certain children, I suspect that Mr. Saunders did very little to use progressive discipline to shut down the hateful rhetoric. I'd like to turn my attention to the matter at hand with you, Mr. Breaker. In your opening statement last week, you said that many of the same people have called for removal of board members and administrators due to religious beliefs. That's blatant mischaracterization. I ask that you provide evidence of that statement or correct the public record. You also state that some members disrespectfully walk out while others are speaking. Let me make this clear. I have no obligation to listen to speakers that proselytize, pray, slander, or use hate speech against marginalized people, period. Finally, let me say how profoundly disappointed I am that you have sought to silence a person who I find to be the most genuine advocate for children in this community. Though her children that were verbally abused by a teacher in this district, and this board failed to remove that teacher promptly, those children have graduated and moved on. And yet this person still works for change with a passion unmatched by anyone in this community. Not for herself, she didn't do it for herself, She does it for all children, black, brown, white, straight, gay, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, atheist. I call on you, Mr. Spock, to immediately reverse your decision to bar this person from attending these meetings. As parent co-leader of the Morton for Equality Task Force, I demand the removal of Principal Michael Saunders, Superintendent Craig Smock, and resignation of board members Diane Kroll and Tim Breaker.
Is that it, Dr. Sander?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That we'll move on to our discussion items. You wanna-
Okay, I provided you with a kind of a revision of our current policy about public comments, and this was based on our previous discussion at our last meeting. So taking all that input, created a potential draft that we can now kind of walk through and talk about. So I'd like to do just that. Take a look at, I think we provided you a paper copy, also electronic copy of the draft. And I think if you'd like, we can just walk through it page by page and section by section. I don't have to read it all to you, but maybe if something, you have some notes about anything in particular, we can stop and look at it, kind of going through the pages. On the first page, you'll see this is something that we did not have in our original policy, and that is a potential prelude to the public comments, what gets read at each meeting, and how that would change based on the changes that are reflected in the policy. So just to have that script there as a way of explaining what's behind that prelude. As you can see, it would call for 2 sessions of public comments rather than just one. The first of which would cover agenda items for the meeting that would be specific to things that we're either discussing or acting on. And then the second session, which would take place at the end of the meeting, would be on any other topics from the public that didn't necessarily relate to the agenda. And then you can see on the second page, I've got it kind of separated out in different sections that talk about the public comments card, what would be on the card, what we would require people to complete, and in what time frame that they'd have to complete it before the meeting. And then Dr. Sander or whoever would be doing that at the time would be able to sort them based on, is this a session 1 comment or a session 2 comment, and the information that would be on the card. I know I've had conversations with a board member about whether addresses are on the card. We do have people's address on the card. I have not checked with our attorney on this yet, but I think people wouldn't be required to put their address down. I think that's something we ask for. So we'd probably want to change the card and make that say optional on the card. Otherwise, we can ask for people's names. People do have to be able to sign in and they have to be called. But as far as the address and email and that other information, I don't think that's something that we can require people to provide, but maybe they'd want to provide it if they were expecting a written response. So, and then of course, how we talk about the topic in order to determine whether that's an agenda item topic to be discussed or presented in the first session, or whether it's not, and for it to be discussed in the second session. That would be important to have on the card. So we'd have to alter the card. I think everyone has a sample of the card in front of them, so that's what that section's about. I'll pause now. I don't want to just talk through the whole thing, but any questions up to this point, or how would you like to proceed through this document? We'll just kind of hit it, whatever's on your mind.
I think it might be important to touch on the splitting it up into 2 sessions.
Okay.
Are we unique? I think our public we ought to share with the public why we're doing it and whether we're unique in doing this as well.
I know there's a couple districts in our area that do this. I know IVC is one of them. I can't remember. What was that? Metamora. Is that high school?
Metamora High School.
High school, because that's separate districts there. I think the town of Normal, I think think was another one that I found that did this. There are probably others. We didn't do a broad survey to see who all did this.
And that's fine, I just wanted the record to show we're not unique in doing this, and many districts, audience presentation is somewhat non-existent, but it's good when we have audience presentation, but we have to think in terms of the efficiency of our meeting and why others might have done this, and I think as the amount of people coming to speak to the board, I think it makes a lot of sense to break it down to agenda items and then other topics at the end, from my standpoint.
Other thoughts along that?
I mean, obviously, the idea that if it's agenda related, they can speak before we did have discussions and or votes, which is, lets the public be heard on the matters at hand. And then it also allows that if people are here to present, whether it be an auditor or something like that, it allows them to get to the business quicker. And so if they want to move on with their evening or whatever, so I think from that standpoint, and then at the end, it allows us to hear any other things that people want to address the board with. It still gives everybody ample time, but it allows us to conduct our business in a timely fashion, so.
Agreed, we talked about this last meeting, and I think we all agreed upon that for that exact reason.
You want to just kind of look down through the sections of this policy and see if anything strikes you as something that we need to consider, discuss. Language on proxy speakers, time limitations, written communications, board responses, and the board president's authority in managing the process.
I think what you've got here is a good start, and we might need to adjust it 4 or 5 meetings after the fact, but right now I think it looks pretty decent.
Always the minefield of actually defining what orderly conduct and what mutual respect and civility looks like. And there's no way to actually put that in, define that. And unfortunately, that's gonna continue to be an issue that we have to continue to monitor. Because people always have the ability to say things they don't agree with us, and that's fine. Also, it needs to be civil.
Right.
Right, civil and respectful. One person may think one way and another person may think another, and I don't know if we're ever gonna get to that, just because that's the society that we live in right now.
I would have made a comment at the last meeting about the purpose of the audience participation being to address the board, and, you know, wondered, should we shore that up and ask people to specifically address the board? But, you know, as we've talked about this, I really like the idea of keeping the discussion as open as possible so that people can respectfully say what they feel they need to say. And so it seems like this is as open as we can possibly keep things without limiting in as much as possible the content, just actually how it helps our meeting flow. So I'm want to kind of withdraw that and just say I want to emphasize more the respectfulness instead of the content. And then I did have a question, just, it says under proxy speakers that the person must be physically present. And that makes sense since if they can't come, they can write the board. But number 2 says the proxy speaker may not speak more than once. Is that as a proxy, or is that then they don't speak for themselves? I'm a little confused on that.
Yeah, so, and another aspect of that is there's 2 sessions now. So that's something I wanted to talk about and possibly edit on this. But to your point, what that means is if someone's going to come and speak on their own behalf, they can't also be a proxy speaker for someone else. Because in that proxy speaking, they may extend to their own speech and divert from the proxy's written speech. So a different person, someone who's not planning to speak on their own behalf, should be the one speaking for the proxy. As the proxy, I should say.
So are you suggesting that this sentence be rewritten?
Yes. At least about the part of at once at each board meeting, because of the fact that there's 2 sessions now. That also speaks to the next paragraph down, the very last sentence, under time limitations. If someone is going to come and speak in both sessions, I have something to say about something that is on the agenda and something that is not on the agenda. We've allowed speakers to have 5 minutes. So what do we do in a situation where we have a speaker wanting to speak in both sessions on 2 different topics? The way I've written this is a person in that situation, which we would know in advance because they've completed a card that states their topics. The way I've written this is that they get 3 minutes each of those 2 times and I guess have 6 minutes total on the evening. I don't know if that's the right number, if they get the remaining amount, like do they get 5 minutes and whatever they don't use and we're somehow keeping track of the remaining time? Do we split it into 2.5 minutes? So I just picked 3 as just kind of rounding it up. And do you like keeping it at 3?
I think we should start at 3 and then adjust later on. Again, this is all, if you make a huge change, changes should be done incrementally, right? So if we make a huge change right now, when we mess up, then that's not good. But if we make smaller changes like this and then adjust the time later to 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever, we can do that at a later time. So this is a perfect starting point,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Okay.
So you're good with 3 minutes each session?
Each session, no more than that. You know,
Tom, you got something you're biting?
Yeah, I really want to leave this open-ended a little bit to the discretion of the president relative to, if we have 200 people come in, we're not going to let everybody speak 5 minutes. So I think in here has to be a statement at the
We've
discretion.
done that in the past, that when we had 20 speakers, we limited them to 3, trying to keep it to an hour.
And it says that under board president's authority, he or she has the authority to make decisions regarding time limitations and to enforce the civil and respectful conduct as indicated in Board Policy 830 and others. And it goes on to the different authority that the board president has to
Right.
stop a speaker, to warn speakers, to prevent speakers from continuing to speak. So there's a lot of latitude in that that I think allows for what you're talking about. So on the
And I knew
fly,
it was here, but when we're focusing kind of hard rules on 3 minutes and so on, I don't want the remainder of the document or comments to be lost.
yeah. So the board's okay with,
yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The first page says, or replace that sentence with the altered time limits based on the number of speakers. So he's got that, the president can change that around. So it is in there.
We want to leave that discretion too.
Yes. Yes, because if there's 200 speakers, obviously if everybody does 5 minutes, we'll be here till the next day and that would not be pretty for anybody.
Does everybody see what Mr. Rudd's talking about? In the preamble page, it's like the 3rd paragraph. Last sentence in parentheses, that's where the board president would not say, we will limit your comments to 5 minutes. Instead, he would say, or she would say, you know, whatever the time limit would be on that evening based on the number of people wanting to speak. So you're okay with 3 minutes on the 2 sessions, and what I would really wanna change now that I look at this is the proxy speaker arguably should be able to speak in 2 different sessions. Maybe I'm a proxy speaker in 1 session, I still have my own speaking I can do in a different session. Does that make sense? So I'll change that language to the proxy speaker may not speak in more than once in a given session of a board meeting.
But to Jerry's point, this is a starting place.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I understand the need for a proxy speaker if they have a document with all of their thoughts on it and they can present that to the board, but we can sort that out later.
And that is an alternative option. I wouldn't want to deny a person the ability to have a proxy speaker so that it's
At
presented.
this time, I understand that, but it depends upon how things progress and what the law says.
Okay.
That's, would be my driving force.
Any thoughts, David?
No, I think this summed up what we talked about last time pretty well. Got it on a couple pages, and I think it's a good starting place. We might like, oh gosh, that's a terrible idea, and we might, you can always revisit it. But I just think for efficiency of like the actual business of that night, if we're trying to get done, if it keeps it smooth, and then we address it, and then all the other things can be done later when the work is done. I don't know. It seems just more efficient to me.
I wasn't here last week, but I appreciate and supported everything that was talked about, and the development of this, I think it looks really good. To your point on the 2 sessions, I do like that. I think it was maybe brought up a bit last week on transparency. I do feel like this will help that. People will see and get to hear what's on our agenda and what's spoken about. And then it just gives opportunity for the community, I think, to hear the school business in that first session.
Yeah, I agree. This is good right here. It's a good start anyway. And I agree with you, Jerry, that, if we need to revisit at any time, we can revisit and make adjustments. But for conducting school business, I think it's a good place to start.
Any other thoughts before we move on?
I don't think any of this violates our current policy. It adjusts it, and I think probably you could say that our current policy is less specific than this, and we probably could make this change without a change in policy, but I think we should formally change it. And so I'm recommending that we do that on January 16th, our first meeting back in the next year. I'll provide what is basically going to be the same copy as the final draft with the one change that I mentioned about proxy speakers. And the question would be, do you want to enact this on the January 16th meeting as our protocol? Yeah. So we'll approve it on that meeting as our formal policy. We've agreed to it informally here, and I think we could, there's nothing saying we couldn't enact this anyway without a change in policy, I think, so. We good with that?
So what does that look like? That goes first on the agenda and then
I think we can call this our discussion of the policy, if you're okay with that, and we can go straight to an action item of approving the policy in the January meeting.
and then go to public comment after that?
I don't think we necessarily
Okay.
have to approve this before we go into public.
Perfect.
If you'd like to do that.
No, I know, I'm just making sure we're doing halfway right, so.
Let me give that some thought.
Okay, whatever.
Maybe
it
we
is.
could,
We've got a couple weeks to think about it. So.
yeah.
See, I think you can do it today relative to the rule on the discretion of the president from an
Yeah.
efficiency standpoint, so I don't see that as a problem.
Okay. All right, our next meeting, we'll enact it formally and we'll do that process from that point forward. All right, thank you for that discussion.
That, we'll move on to action items. So the action item tonight is to approve the 2024 high school locker room renovation in North Entry Edition. I guess we can get a motion in a second and then move on with a discussion after that.
Yep.
So I'll accept the motion.
I move that we approve the 2024 high school locker room renovation in North Entry Edition.
I'll second it.
With that discussion,
Well, if I could, I just want to say a few things about the cost and the process and potentially the sticker shock that maybe some of you got when you saw what the bids came in at. And there's a lot of explanation as to why the price is what it is because of the things that we've added onto the project. So I want to talk through that. I provided you a kind of a spreadsheet of information. And I just want to kind of quickly walk through it, answer any questions that you might have, and kind of explain how did we get from talking about a $5.2 million project several months ago and end up with a bid opening of $6.97 million. So what happened? And this spreadsheet kind of explains the process. The original cost estimate was largely based on square footage. And in the time frame that we had in the design process and discussion, we definitely had an increase in the scope. We knew going into this whole project that we were talking about, what was the first thing we talked about? Locker rooms, right? And getting them equal, meeting the Title IX requirements of equality in our locker rooms. And then we decided, I think very wisely, to increase the scope to include some other things that we could improve along the way. So sometimes the term scope creep has a very negative connotation, but I think any of us who do projects in our own homes experience the same thing. While we're doing this, we're gonna also do this, and while we've got this wall open, let's insulate or let's rewire, and that's what we've done in this case. We've made wise decisions on doing additional things while we were doing a major renovation. So I want to just say that up front. If you look through this spreadsheet, you can see that we started off talking a lot about $5.2 million, not based on a lot of specifics, but based on square footage of the footprint that we were acting in. $300,000 of the bid amount is in contingencies, meaning we hope not to have to spend that $300,000, but that's what happens when you have surprises that come up, things we weren't expecting, and additional costs from when the contractors start to do the demo and start to dig into the project. They might discover things that we didn't know, things that were covered up. So we hope that doesn't get spent, but that was never talked about when we talked about the cost estimate at $5.2 million. Contingencies weren't included. We've added roofing, several roofs onto this project. We budget estimated those at $500,000, including the East Gym, the weight room, the corridor roofing. Those are roofs we don't have to necessarily do in this project, but it's wise to do them while we're acting on that footprint area. Those are projects that we've moved up in our timeline. Things we might have done in the summer or some other time. In fact, I think we have the East Gym even marked for the coming summer. We're moving those up into the project to be part of this bidding project for efficiency and for the timing of it. So that was not part of the original discussion in the cost estimates of $5.2 million. Air conditioning was another concept. While we're tearing into this entire area of the school, it seems very wise to air condition everything. The locker rooms, which are not air conditioned, the East Gym is not air conditioned, lobby space, those spaces are not air conditioned. And for $300,000, I think it would be unwise to proceed without including that. So when you do add those, I call them add-ons, you get a number of $6.3 million. When you add that to our original cost estimates, which we never really we never really adjusted along the way. As we were adding things on, we didn't have our architect come to us and say, okay, now that you want to do this, here's what happened to the cost estimate, okay? So we really didn't have the time to do that, frankly, in the design process. They were working very feverishly just to get the design the way we wanted it and get the bid documents put together for the contractors to get the bidding done before December was over. So this shows you the actual cost of the project. It's really not 6.9 million, it's 7.1 million. We're doing an asbestos abatement in the tunnels underneath this whole project. So there's asbestos around the pipe insulation that's going to be completely removed so that these tunnels can be accessed, used without concern. That's happening over Christmas break. So we're doing that now ahead of this whole project. So that's, you know, in all transparency, that's part of the cost of this project. That's why I have the $7.1 million figure there as being the actual cost of the project. So how much are we over? Well, you could argue that we're over 803,000 based on all these increases in the scope and nuances and changes that we've made in the project. Below the spreadsheet, you can see a lot of the explanation of how this is a very complicated project. We are demoing interior space. We are adding into courtyard space and other exterior spaces. We're dealing with strange elevations to try to improve the ADA accessibility from the outside and how you approach the building. And you can see there's a lot of different details regarding that. How far out we have to replace the concrete in the parking lot so the grading is at a level where it's ADA accessible, it's comfortable to walk in, you're not walking uphill, you're not climbing stairs and things like that. The lobby addition, which is gonna be beautiful, you know, that's a complicated project. And that's not just a simple project like building a gym on an open green space. We designed the canopy design, that vision wasn't really in our original cost estimate way back several months ago. And we actually have a picture of that, a few pictures that Lee has shared with us of what that might look like. Just so as we're approving this, you know, the public can kind of get a glimpse. We'll have other images of this that we'll publicize along the way as we get them. But we're talking about this being the, you know, the look of the new entrance. So the canopy, those are pretty massive canopies. And the whole facade is a structure of its own, which wasn't really something that was in the original cost estimate when we were just looking at square footage of how much area this would be. So that's part of what I would call this $800,000 improvement in our school compared to the original cost estimates. And I think we've got a few different visions of that, or different angles. So that's going to be a difference maker. Other things you can see on the list, the courtyard infill grew as we've talked about it, and that's not an easy project to do that. So what's now green space inside of our schools is going to be interior space in the school. So that's a complicated project, and it grew. We increased flooring that we were going to replace all the way down to the Bertha Frank Performing Arts Center. We know that the timeline that we're asking contractors to work under is going to possibly require second shift work, which is an added expense to contractors, and we know that's most likely built into their bids. And you can see at the bottom there, I have a few lists of like, well, while we're at it, we did this, you know, and again, to me, those are wise decisions. While you're at it, while you're accessing the tunnels, get rid of the old heating system piping and get it out of your way. That's a large demo job that is complicated and difficult. While we're at it, replace the storm sewer. We have 250 feet of storm sewer and sanitary sewer that run under I think the whole length of our school, all the way to K Street. So stormwater goes in the parking lot, goes under our school. Well, some of those are leaking. Rodney, you have a comment about that?
Yeah.
just to clarify, the stormwater runs to the north,
Okay,
and so it, but the sanitary does run all the way from the north to the south,
okay.
under the
Full
building, under the auditorium.
And we've experienced problems with that, with the pipes and leaking.
Yeah, the stormwater piping is.
So again, this is one of those, while you're at it, and we don't know what the cost of that is. Like, we don't have a cost estimate of that, that's built into the bidding. So what amounts are within this 803,000, what's in there? That's a mystery because it's all one big bid for all the different all these different projects. So just cleaning that up, again, the roofing, that we don't know how much, what's that in the bid? It's not broken out in bids, so we don't know what that's costing us, but that's not really part of the renovation project. It's something we wanna have done, we wanna have that all cleaned up and done. Obviously, if you're gonna renovate an area and your roofs are just about due to be done, do the roofs before you put brand new, renovation underneath them, right? So these are just wise decisions, we're moving things up in our schedule. So as we bring projects up in our schedule, the price goes up, but not really for just the renovation project. So some of these things, as I said in the last statement there, some of these things are things that we were planning to do. Maybe we can, we've always said this was a contingency in our funding process. We can always decide to not spend $2 million in a summer on regular capital projects. For example, if we wanted to, we could say, we're not gonna spend $2 million. We were planning to spend $500,000 on roofing, so let's just spend $1.5 million this summer. And the $500,000 is right back in our hands, so to speak, for something else later. So I just thought that the drastic number between 5.2 million when we first started talking about this project to now 7.1 million, that's a big price change. And I thought it was important to talk through that because we really hadn't done that through this design process as much. And I just wanted to present that and if you had any questions about it or comments.
On your last statement on the sum of the costs, is that number kind of fuzzy? Is that what you're saying? On what that number would be?
Yeah, so we had some money budgeted, like we had 500,000. I can't honestly recall which roofs were 500,000. Do you remember, Rodney, or Steve?
Well, I think we were aiming for the Illinois Street side of the building.
Okay, so we had just general 500,000 set aside to do some roofs. And with roofing, we can defer roofing projects, we generally look at every 25 years as like a time to start replacing, and this district has been fantastic with that. Our architects have done a great job we have all the roofs scheduled out, and when I say all the roofs, it's not just 7 roofs. Some schools have 7 or 8 roofs themselves, different ones and different timelines. So our architecture has done a fantastic job of keeping us on schedule, and we always have these come before us. But we know we can defer some of these. Okay, so it's 25 years since the last time this roof's been redone. There's no problems with it. We can wait another year. We fluctuate some of those decisions based on our other needs.
So you don't know what you don't know what it will be reduced by?
Like, I don't know. I can't tell you what, if we were to bid out separately, the East Gym, weight room, and corridor roofing,
Yeah.
I don't know what that number is.
Okay.
It could be $800,000. I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, we don't, it's, that number that was originally budgeted was based on square foot information that we've had from previous projects. As the project moves forward, they'll have a schedule of values and we can probably figure some of that out, but the point is that it's in there.
Okay.
I don't know if you were saying maybe take it out of the bid.
No, I just wondered what in the future are we not gonna be spending? Like what less would we spend in the future, not necessarily off of
And
this.
how old are the roofs that we're replacing in this?
I think they were really close to 25.
Yeah, I mean, all the roofs at the high school are all within like kind of a 5-year range, and we've done, I don't know, more than half of the roofs already.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter, we originally had the Illinois Street side, the southwest part of the building. That was kind of what we had in our long-term plan is coming up for the summer.
Okay.
And technically maybe a little bit older than the ones we're doing as part of this project. But they're so close that it's kind of interchangeable. It made sense to, you know, economy of scale and, you know, adjacencies and things like that to do it in this area.
And, you know, with the HVAC work and whatnot, there's gonna be a lot of penetrations and cut in these roof spaces. So to me, it makes sense to be doing the roof along in conjunction with that as opposed to patching the roof because you cut a hole in it.
No, I totally am fine with doing the roofs. I just didn't know if there was a number that you can look in the future and say, yeah, we're spending that much less now.
The
But
best we
maybe
could do
that's
right now
not
is
a good-
estimate it based on square
Yeah,
footage.
square foot.
Like we could
There's-
get the square footage and we could go, okay, based on what we would price it at right now, this is probably
What
what's
you'd
in the
say.
bid. You know, you could
Yeah.
have a good guess. How hard would that be to calculate?
Pretty easy.
Okay.
Troy,
Yeah, I'd be
what's
curious.
the email for that laptop you're shooting this up off of? Or can I send you something?
You can.
Just send it to you?
Sure.
Maybe, I'd like to ask the question maybe a different way that might be helpful for me.
gonna
If we
be-
look at our long-term plans, we've got the roof, we've got these items in there. Even though they're estimates, the total amount of dollars there, is that easy enough to give us? That you put into this project, but they were coming anyway?
Yeah, so.
That's another way of asking.
Right, so what I would have Lee do is look at the square footage on these roofs and give us an estimate if we were gonna do those as a separate project, what would we guess those to go for? And that would probably give us the best indication of what's actually in this bid for doing the roofs. So what you say, or,
Are there other capital projects besides the roofs though? I mean, cause the statement says summer 2024 capital project schedule. So there's probably something beyond just roofs, right?
let's see,
There's a bunch of roofs of part of the high
it might
school
have been just the roofs.
Okay.
that's due.
Trying to think of. Yeah, I don't know if, I can't think of any other, maybe I should have just said the roofs, because I can't think of any other
That's
capital
fantastic.
What was
projects.
the question?
Like what we have planned for this,
Yeah,
for the
like-
other capital things for
And
next
that's
summer.
actually taking away from it because you're doing it
Oh, I
in
see.
this project.
I don't know if there's anything but roofs,
It was-
taking away.
Yeah, oh, that we would be taking, yeah.
Oh,
You're just yeah, what you were saying, Craig, is we're exchanging roofs that we were gonna be doing, and we're
Yeah.
doing just different roofs as part of this project.
Yeah,
We're not, but you're not proposing removing other 2020.
I don't think anything else was pertained to the high school that we're moving
Yeah.
forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it might, I probably should have reworded that and said, instead of some of these costs, basically it's the roofs.
Okay, that makes sense,
There's two sections of the roof that's due in 2024.
right?
So this coming summer
Let's do
that
it
they're
this
gonna
way.
do, I believe. And if you guys go to there's a 15-year plan out in the facilities folder that shows exactly what he's talking about. And then you can see when the roofs are gonna be done. And then the other thing that I do wanna make sure that I mention is, I don't know how much money we're gonna save, but the sewer and the pipes, if it's an emergency, it's gonna cost 5 times what it's gonna cost right now, so now's the time to do it.
But you couldn't even physically do it
right.
without the tunnels being open.
So
You
this.
couldn't even physically do it without demoing everything.
Right, so you'd have to demo, so now's the time to do this, so that way we can be good for the next, I don't know how long the pipes are gonna last, but well longer than we're gonna be alive. So if we don't do it now, it would be really, really silly, in my opinion, and I've done a lot of pipes before, and it's, yeah.
Lee, you'll probably wanna hire me after this, seeing my grant. Slide it to the other one, would you? So these are to scale, and right here would be the entrance to the gymnasium, the old gymnasium, this is where you come in right now. So this is the foyer area we have right now, and that blue square, high tech, I know. Now, if you scroll it to the other one, and you can see it per scale, that's what it becomes.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah.
that all of a sudden makes it real, that all of a sudden, and this is an entrance to the high school. And this is bigger than, this space is bigger than the junior high space. Not by much, but a little bit.
It is a little, it's longer.
Yeah.
You know, the challenge in this area is we're just dealing with existing
Right.
conditions, so it's only as wide as it can be. And, you know, we've made a lot of effort to try to maximize the width of this space.
But that,
freehand that or did you use a ruler?
I really don't know how that's helpful.
The point is we're gonna spend a little bit more money up front, but we're gonna save money in the long run.
So anyways,
I'm good with it.
to me, that putting them side by side in a scale like that is, Lee probably could have done almost as good a job at that. But
Almost.
I did it for free.
Yeah, another just little quick highlight, that Craig touched on, the East Gym, there's some other things that have been discussed for the future in the East Gym. And just a matter of like preparing for that, we thought it was, doing the roof over that. If we end up doing a new floor in that gym, we kind of wanted to make sure we had a new roof over this space before we kind of do that work. And also even the AC, we're adding air conditioning to that gym. Again, if we're looking at replacing the wood floor, having that conditioned, especially when you're doing redoing the floor in the summer, you kind of want to have that happen ahead of time. So it made sense for things that maybe we had budgeted in those other projects to kind of shift into this schedule because it just made sense from a sequence of work.
There's gonna be an incredible quality of life improvement in this. Air conditioning locker rooms, I'll just let you think about that for a while. That's gonna be a huge benefit. And when you think about the number of guests that will come through this door, that already do come through our door, and they're immediately met with a brick wall, and there isn't much space there, and what it's gonna become to all the people that visit our schools, our public, our guests from other schools, our students every single day. And when you think about the phase 2, when we bring our offices down to this entrance and with the safety of having all office personnel at the location where everyone comes through the door instead of a split main entrance situation, the safety aspect of that and how that's gonna look in terms of how you come in and how you file out and through the office, just gonna be a massive improvement. These are the kind of things I think people envision when they maybe wish we had a new high school. I think they picture things like we're about to do to this school. And so I'm very excited about it. I just wanted though to go through and explain how did we get to this number? And I think it's through a lot of wisdom that we got to this number. And I'm really looking forward to what this can become. I plan to, assuming you all approve it tonight, I plan to get a lot of images from Lee and a lot of the 3D. There's interior
I'm available.
rendering. Yeah, well, I'll have Tim get his coloring book out. What color crayons do you have, Tim? Because
Basic 5.
I'm not sure.
Basic 5.
So we will, once it's approved and we get some of those images, we'll share them with the public. We'll put them in our publications, our websites, Potter Post. If I find the opportunity to speak at Rotary, the Chamber, and different things, and kind of let our public know this is what we're planning, this is what we're spending, and this is what we know it's going to look like when it's done. So, unless you have any other questions, I just wanted to walk through that because I know for me, I looked at that price and I was like, what happened again now? What was?
Well, no, I appreciate this a lot, because I think that's why there was hesitancy and emotion. It's like, well, no one's gonna motion that, and that's $2 million more than we talked about in the beginning, but it's not exactly what we talked about in the beginning either, right?
Right,
And so
right.
it's kind of an apples and oranges, like the initial kind of, this is what we wanna do to what it has become.
Right.
And so, but you have to lay that out to really see where it came from.
You do. Yep.
So the big question then is we were budgeted for, I think, 6 million, now we're gonna spend 8 million. Where's that other 2 million coming from?
So we, in our plan, we have $2.8 million coming from the sale of land. We have our fund balances, which I can't recall all of those in the presentation that Lisa and I did several months ago when we were trying to show, here's our funding process. So we don't, and again, the contingencies of, well, we can always defer some of our summer capital projects to whatever degree we need to. There's $2 million every year of like, whoa, we're not gonna do that.
I get it. You don't have to really speak to me. I'm just making sure.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. This doesn't ruin our plan, our budgeting plan at all.
Okay.
This will be totally in line with what we expected.
I just wanted it to be out loud for the people to hear.
No, that's an excellent question. Okay, any other thoughts or questions?
No, it makes sense, why you have the building opened up, do some of the other stuff, instead of go back and do it later on and make a mess. I mean, with construction, it's better just get it done all at once sometimes.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks for explaining it. I
My
think it's,
pleasure.
Any other discussion?
Dr. Cross,
Yes.
Mr. Rudd,
yes.
Mrs. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Neely,
Yes.
Mr. Roth,
Yes.
Mr. Breaker,
Yes.
and Dr. Crawl.
Yes.
Well, it's exciting that it's actually gonna happen, so I wish it didn't cost so much, but it is exciting that there's gonna be an improvement and entrance and some equity for our teams, so I think there's some positives to it, and it's exciting to see some improvements, so. And that building will be in use for a long, long time, whether it becomes a middle school someday in the future, or it remains a high school, so.
And I think it's extremely hard to measure the safety aspect of it, the benefits of that.
So,
And then the other bonuses is we'll be done with Title IX, right? That'll be it, we're done.
with that, I'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Neely,
Yes.
Dr. Cross,
Yes.
Dr. Crawl,
Yes.
Mrs. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Roth,
Yes.
Mr. Rudd,
Yes.
and Mr. Breaker.
Yes. Accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Dr. Crawl,
Yes.
Mrs. Rudd, or Mr. Rudd.
I'm the missus,
I
yes.
know, every once in a while, I have to wake everybody up. Mr. Breaker.
Yes.
Dr. Cross,
Yes.
Mrs. Lehman.
Yes.
Mr. Neely, and Mr. Roth.
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. The Mason cookie jars are for you. If you wanna switch with someone else, you like someone else's better,